want to welcome you guys to yet another episode of FDL Presents the Zach Russell podcast. And today's guest is an amazing one. She's a young, inspiring go-getter. She's somebody that I've seen grow so much in the past, like 4 to 6 months. You've seen her become somebody that was very sure of herself, very confident, but now she's turned into a leader of so many other young, inspiring girls that are trying to change their lives and be okay with being strong and confident. And it's just been an amazing evolution. And I'm so excited to have, you guys know her as DesB, Desiree Scroggins. Is that?
Scoggin. You're close.
Scoggin. Well, why did I throw an R in there? I'm losing my
Everyone
mind.
does it. They could look at it and say it like that. It's fine.
But I want to thank you for coming on today. This is I'm super excited about this because this is going to be one that I have a mostly female audience that listens to these. And I know we have a huge overlap with people that follow both of us. So it's going to be a good one because I'm excited for everybody to hear your story. But first and foremost, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me so much. And I'm really excited to, be able to share my story. Like we kind of talked about before this, so many times you get on podcasts and it's like, well, do you believe in flexible dieting or calories or whatever? So it's nice and freeing to kind of be on a podcast where I can just chat about my journey, be able to inspire people through that instead of kind of almost boring them with the science behind the industry.
I mean, there's so much information out there, guys. Like it's cool. Like flexible dieting is amazing and it's a tool. And that, Des talked about this before we went live, is flexible dieting is a tool that allows us to achieve nutritional freedom. So then we can live the life we want to live. And it's literally, it's the most advanced. I podcasted with Jordan Syatt yesterday, and we talked about the fact that like people forget that flexible dieting is probably the most advanced like nutritional practice because it requires so much knowledge and it just requires somebody that has a lot of experience to truly understand that you are free, but you have to understand the variables. It's like the why behind nutrition. So when you understand that, you know how to apply that to your unique situation. And that takes a long time.
It is. It's just like every day though, you're always learning. And you just have to continue to master your craft.
That's it. And if everybody listening can understand that no matter what age you are, if you change that mindset that every single step you take every single day is a learning experience, no matter what, then you're going to learn so much. Your life's going to be so much better. So one question I like to start the podcast with is, let's say that I shouted you out on my Instagram story or somebody was browsing on the Instagram feed, just searching, and they happen to stumble upon your Instagram page. We live in a society where like business cards are a thing of the past. Like I don't give anybody a business card. I just say, hey, check out my Instagram. It's literally our portfolio. So if I were to stumble upon your page or somebody listening were to, why would I follow DesB?
That's a great question. I definitely think that as you continue to move into being that influencer title, that's something that you do have to think about because, like you said, we don't have business cards anymore. It's kind of what you see is what you get. So for me, I try to make sure that my personality is always shining through my page in terms of the thought and, that I love to educate. I love giving workouts to people that aren't ridiculous and involve some crazy cables and dynamic movements that are actually ridiculous in the gym. I like to keep it short and sweet. I like to inspire. I like to share where I came from. I like to share my faith, my community. And I think that ultimately people follow me because they immediately see that I'm just a girl that takes a lot of selfies. I don't have, photographers following me around. I don't have professional pictures. I don't have this crazy tripod camera recording my videos. I just do what I can. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that.
And it's I can back this up, and it's super obvious that you care.
Yeah, I forgot to add that. I do.
No, you don't have, and that's the thing. Like, it's so obvious. It's so obvious that people can see that and they rally behind it because they can see, wow, she really does care. Because we live in a society now, it's sad, but it's like, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the mindset, and that's okay, and that's perfectly fine. Like, but because we live in a society where we can compare ourselves to anybody at any moment, and we know what everybody's doing around the world, it makes it difficult to not think what's in it for me, because you feel like you're running out of time and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have enough time to tackle all these goals that you want to have. And we have this huge ambition, and it's just a super fascinating thing. So I can back that up, that you guys need to go follow Des, but she's
Plug
yeah,
it in.
I'm plugging for you, but she's growing like crazy, and I'm not surprised, because she's providing a lot of value, which is super cool.
Exactly.
So one thing I'm super fascinated by is childhood. So I'm a huge proponent that like everything starts at the home,
Oh yeah.
no matter what. Like from ages 1 to 7, our brain is just literally being developed, and so we're building these connections that help from 7 on how we see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, I mean, it's just not a surprise with a lot of things that happen. So if you could just for like 3 to 5 minutes, just kind of go into like where you're from, what your parents did, etc. Any key moments in your childhood, you play any sports or anything like that, so we can kind of get a basis of what did it look like up until this point for Des?
Right. So I grew up in Michigan, very small town, right on the border of Indiana. So it's very much Michigan, but that's why I'm in Indiana a lot. A lot of people are like, "Where do you live?" I'm like, I don't know. So I grew up right there. We were able to do a lot. My family and I, we traveled a lot. We did the Disney things. We did this. We did that. Up until I was in fourth grade, going into fifth grade. Then my parents split up. That was really hard for me because my mom remarried. She started seeing someone else. A few years are going by now, and now there's this baby on the way. My now stepbrother, and or should I say half brother. And it was just a crazy transitional time for me because I had to step up into a role of independence, and I was only 10 years old. I didn't have a mom and a dad there at the same time. I had a little sister who I had to care for when my mom wasn't around, and then when my mom was around, she was working, so I still had to step into this role of leadership. And I think that's where my independence really sprouted, because I was forced into a position of growth. But as we all know, being most uncomfortable usually leads to the most success. So through that, I think that's where my kind of independence sprouted. Moving into high school, moving into middle school, I was made fun of. I had an interracial parent stepdad relationship. I had a mixed half brother. I was bullied because at this point in time, it was 2007. It wasn't as accepted even as it is today. So it was weird for me. I was, like I said, 12 years old. I had a black stepdad and a mixed brother, and like a half Mexican dad and a white mom. It was just weird. So going through the progress of kind of learning more about myself as I went into high school and middle school, I was finally feeling like I found my niche. It was sports. I was so good at basketball. I wanted to be the first woman in the NBA. I already had these high goals set for myself. I always had the newest LeBron shoes. I wore jerseys to school. Like, I was so basketball. And then in 2011, I went through an ACL reconstruction, along with just some other like knee issues that happened during basketball practice. So I gave that up. I gave up basketball because then I became really good at volleyball. So it was just finding myself through sports. The first 2 years obviously really sucked because I was injured. I had just had an amazing sophomore year of volleyball where I would then be looked at by like Division I universities in my junior year season. But I went through that injury to where my junior year wasn't as hot as it could have been. I could have easily kneeled over and let it take me, but instead I took advantage of it, came back from it, went to college for volleyball, transferred then to play Division I volleyball, enjoyed that. That came to an end, which, I have a whole YouTube video on that, so I won't elaborate. But after that, that's when I found bodybuilding, because I didn't know how to keep fit anymore. I didn't have anyone telling me to run down and back or to lift this weight. I had to figure it out for myself. And so that's when I Googled fitness plans and I found bodybuilding.com, did my first workout, kind of split from there. And, really the rest is history, but it was just it was a completely different route than I thought. And I think that's a lot of things that people don't realize is that you never end up where you planned. But that's also the beauty behind life is that it's constantly evolving. And whether you think you could have handled it or not, you just mold with it.
You just have, it's the only thing that we can control is how we see the world.
Yep.
So that's the biggest thing is you saw everything as, okay, and like this happened, like, and what can I do? Can I,
Yep.
how can I make the best of this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of wasting any time on the fact that like, this sucks, like, or this isn't perfect, etc. You focus on, okay, well, how can I make it better? How can I make the most of it? And I think that mindset shift changes everything. If you can truly have an understanding that you are in control of what you can control.
Yep.
And
Yep.
worrying and dwelling about all these things that you can't control do absolutely nothing.
Literally nothing. And don't get me wrong, I'm still learning that. I'm still learning how to handle that. It's not like, oh my gosh, yep, I went through it once, I have it all together. It's still something that I'm learning. So for anyone listening, it's not something that it's just like one day, oh, I've mastered it. It's constantly learning to take that step back, realize, okay, what can I control in this situation? Oh, nothing. Okay, well then I'm going to work on this, or I'm going to do this instead, or maybe work on this so that you can get an answer or whatever it may be. But for the most part, it's really the maturity of life and knowing that there's a crap ton of stuff that still has yet to happen and you just got to be ready for it.
You gotta be, and the cool thing is and this changed my life was the idea that you think of your life as a book.
Mm-hmm.
And in any book, there are stories and there are moments of struggle with any good book. No book that you read and it's just all flowers and it's all happy the whole time. There's no like peaks and valleys.
Mm-mm.
So if you're writing a book and you have all these moments that happen to you that are just huge struggles, it creates like this, like, holy crap, like, whoa, this person is super relatable. They're so inspiring. If life has been nothing but simple, like imagine the person that's handed a bunch of money from their parents right away. They don't appreciate it first and foremost, but then they could become resentful because then they've never built the work ethic and everybody says it was handed to them. So like, there's so many different ways, but if you see it as a story in the sense of everything that bad happens to you, it's kind of like, whoa, this has made my story so much better. And then you just see it that way. You're like, whoa, like, come on, bring on the bad stuff so I can have an even better story. It's
exactly.
It's such a cool fascination. So like if you guys change your mindset towards that, and yes, like it takes time. Like I struggle with this all the time. So and when something bad happens, and what initially happens in my head is like, whoa, like that's a sunk cost that I don't have the time to have something not go right, da 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 da. But in reality, like it's not the end of the world. It's just something you can definitely learn from. And then it throws you in a different direction that actually is the right direction for you. Right. It's a necessary evil. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing. So you move on to, you start doing bodybuilding, and this is a fun story because I think this kind of resonates with you because your first bodybuilding workout was inspired by bodybuilding.com. And then this past year, you were part of the bodybuilding.com spokesmodel search. Yep. And you were a finalist. Did they give placings or anything like that? It was
no, they formatted it a little different. Yeah. So it was just kind of, to be a finalist was like, bing.
Yeah, that was super cool. I was super excited. I voted for you, so.
Yay!
I got you. But it's cool. So now you are a bodybuilding.com athlete. I see you at all the expos or working you guys like crazy.
Yes.
But it's good. It's a really, really cool thing. Bodybuilding.com, if you guys don't know, was the wholesaler of a lot of protein supplements. They were the mecca, but now because of the business model of companies going direct to consumer. So for example, what direct to consumer means that say you have a company that you go to, they're using influencers and giving them discount codes instead of having them go to bodybuilding.com and then So they're giving the discount to the influencer rather than them giving what they would have to like take to eat to put it on bodybuilding.com. So bodybuilding.com was smart because they were seeing a lot of decline in that business model. So they became their own supplement company. They had their own supplement line. And now they're not the wholesaler you see today. Now they are like a Optimum Nutrition or a Quest. Like they're their own end in themselves, which is super cool. And so now Des is a bodybuilding.com athlete. So you guys have heard on the podcast. I'm trying to think. I know Taylor. Trying to think. You guys are going to hear Julian Smith here in the near future. He's a bodybuilding.com athlete. You guys will hear about Kyler in the future. But they have a really cool team with bodybuilding.com. So it's super cool culture. It's been cool to see them evolve. I'm fascinated by that because it's been very quick and it's been very thoughtful. Oh, and Meg. Yeah. So you guys are going to hear Meg on here too, which is a super exciting one. Yeah. You're going to have the whole squad. They're going to be like, hey, they're all this free promotion.
Yes.
But so say you have now, so you're a bodybuilding.com athlete, and now I saw recently you did your first camp, which is, I was smiling the whole time. I'm like, dang, that is so cool. So you have a group of like, you just radiate like positivity and confidence to these young girls. So it kind of explained like what your mission was with this, like why you wanted to, like you've niched big time, but in an amazing way. You are their leader. So what made you want to do that? I think I have an idea, but I know you're going to really go deep with this, but just kind of let me know, like why did you want to do that?
I think, first off, creating the community that I have kind of happened because I never had a community myself. I was always pushed to the side because people were either intimidated by me or they just didn't care about me. So growing up, I had, 1, 2 close friends. Like I had a lot of people that knew me, but that doesn't mean that they liked me or that they wanted to be involved with me. So giving a home for people and young women or women of all ages to feel comfortable sharing their progress, sharing their journey, sharing their faith, sharing this, sharing that. That's something I wish I would have had. And, one of my biggest kind of quotes I live by is be the change you want to see in the world and be who you needed when you were younger. So merging them together and being someone of faith and fitness, being someone of inspiration, education, all of that combined, as well as being the change with bringing people together and not apart, was something that I really wanted to dwell into. So creating my community was something that, yes, I wanted to do it. I just didn't know how, but it happened and it's beautiful. And then expanding on it with the camp, Zach, I would only assume, I know that you've talked at events. I know you've been at events. How euphoric is it to be surrounded by people that know what you do, understand what you do, love what you do, and, want to be a part of it? I mean, it's an unexplainable feeling. So creating that,
I just got goosebumps like thinking about
literally. It's the one of the best feelings, and you just leave. You're motivated. You feel a part of something. You feel so special. And the amount of feedback that I got with how motivated these girls were when they left, and how special they felt, and how they loved this and they loved that. Like that was a moment for me where it was like, wow, like this is what I want to do. Like I want to bring my community into even tighter community by meeting them. Like I need to meet these people. There's only so much you can do through an app, through a Skype call, through email, but to physically have that one-on-one interaction with a follower and someone that you influence is unlike any other. So that's kind of why I was like, you know what, let me try to do this camp, not a meetup. I don't want a stupid meetup. I want there to be importance. I want there to be value added content, etc. And so I think, thank you for my sponsors, Bite Meals, Tula, and bodybuilding.com. They helped me put together swag bags. I had t-shirts made. I had a banner. I had my balloons. Like it was just such a fun environment. So that was kind of why I did it. But yeah.
No, it's super cool. It's like, it puts everything into perspective because there's so much that is not seen. So we live in a world where we put out what we put out. And so people see a post on this, but they don't see all the blood, sweat, and tears that have been put into getting to that point and gaining that influence. And what do you do with influence? Like,
Right.
people can abuse it. Like, do you value somebody's attention so much that you would never, ever take that for granted? And
Right.
it was so cool for you to be able to do that, because that means that you took their attention and you wanted to take it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed at any type of thing where you're able to meet somebody that it's like crazy to think that somebody would be so excited to meet you. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's the coolest thing. And then
So weird.
you,
Yeah.
you do it for hours and hours. So anytime we're at an expo, like this past at the Arnold, like meeting people for 4 or 5 hours, like nonstop, taking pictures and stuff, like being at a booth and then them just coming and nonstop. Like you don't, in 4 or 5 hours go by like that. You don't think of food. You don't think of anything.
No.
You're just so present. And then you get done and it feels like you just had the hardest workout
No,
ever.
literally. You're
You're
so
fried.
stimulated. Like, wow.
It's just the ultimate being present. And I think that is what separates you, is because people know you before they actually know you.
Right.
And that is a skill that is very unique. And I think not many people have it at all. Like, to where, how many times have you seen somebody on social and then you meet them in person? You're like,
Yeah.
like,
What?
yeah,
Oh,
what?
yay.
It's sad, but
Yeah.
it's true. And that
Mhm.
allows, and that's where, if you are your true self and it just radiates out of you, then in person it's going to be even more. It's never
Yeah.
going to be a letdown.
I think that's when, like, what gets me, it's like, I guess it's a compliment, but people are always, you're so much prettier in person. I'm like, oh, thanks. Like, but it's just, it's nice to be someone that I wouldn't even say measures up, because I really do think that when you engage with me in person, I really go above what you would even think that I would
Yeah.
be. But so it's nice to I don't want to say live up to people's standards, but for lack of better terms, it's nice to have the interaction with someone and have it be exactly how they pictured it in their mind. Like, wow, that was exactly what I pictured, versus it being like you said, you meet certain people, you're like, wow, that was like, okay, that was just not maybe what I expected. Like, okay, but it's nice to have them leave and just be, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This and that. There's just nothing but positivity and feedback. And now people are like, where are you gonna go next? I'm like, yay! Like that, that means that there's another one to come. So it's something to build off of.
Yeah, and that's cool. Like, always something to look forward to and something to
Yeah.
build towards. It's that's what life's really about. It's the process towards getting somewhere, not the actual thing. Because if you focus too much on the thing, then it's a letdown. If you
Yeah.
focus on the process, trust me, I'm not preaching. I struggle with this
Oh yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
much.
We could
It's
all be better.
unreal. Yes, 100%. So, man, like, that's so cool. I remember I was watching on my story. I'm like, dang, like seeing all those girls and like all together and for the event. It was just so cool to see. It was just super cool. So, okay, so now you had your first event. What is, I mean, I know you're prepping for competition right now. Actually, this is where I want to go with this. So, a lot of girls look on social media and they're like, whoa, like, I want to compete. I want to do this. I want to do that. What
Mhm.
advice would you give to somebody that wants to compete? Like, do you like, what questions would you really want them to understand what they're actually getting into?
Mhm. I think a lot of people, what you need to understand is that this is just like anything, this is a sport. So there's definitely a difference between accomplishing a goal of like, oh my gosh, my goal is to one day step on a stage. And there's also the understanding to know that for some people, they work their butts off to get on that stage and win. So you have to make sure you walk a fine line between almost mocking the sport of like, oh, I just want to get on stage, and then actually wanting to pursue the sport and wanting to be a wrecking ball, so to speak. because for some people, it's they get offended by saying like, how would you discredit the work that other people have put in just to get on stage? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I never even really thought about it that way. Uh,
Yeah.
it's super, yeah, that's a super interesting point, because it's just like with anything, like if you're going to say, hey, like I'm going to go play in the NBA, it's like, you're probably not going to do it. Like and to say that you're going to step on stage, it's like, yeah, like that's a lot different than going and being at a high level. And
Yes.
what would you say? So now you're like, what, 5.5 weeks out?
Yep.
So, what would you say is the biggest difference for you? Like, if somebody wants to compete, they want to step on stage, they want to do it, like, what would be the pros and cons for you? I know you treat it as a sport, but like, what do you see? Like, okay, what suffers, what doesn't? Like, what are the things that people don't think of, the sacrifices that they have to make to step on stage, when in reality, their goal is just to look better, and
Hmm.
they want to look good in a bikini? That's completely different.
Yes. I think that a few things that you need to take into consideration if this is a goal of yours is to first and foremost realize that the stage is literally always going to be there. So if you need to take time to fix your metabolism, it might not be the time for you to just jump into cutting for a show. If you don't have enough muscle mass to where you would lose it all during a prep, probably not a good time for a show. Again, I think someone having the goal of wanting to step on stage is so freaking awesome, but then make a game plan on how you're going to get there. Don't just expect to show up. So, take time to build, find a great coach, get a better workout program, learn about food. I think that that's something I wish I would have done. Granted, I did good in my first two shows because I came from an athletic background. I was getting done with volleyball. I was training. But for someone that's just like, wow, I just found the gym last month and I want to compete in the fall. It's like, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's game plan on how to get you there competitively, maybe the next fall or something, so really take a second to step back and look at the calendar of life and realize that, like, oh my gosh, I'm 19. Cool. I have up until forever to compete. Like, there's literally master's classes. So like, you have a ton of time to get on stage and be competitive.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. We live in a world where we want to go into extremes. We
Yep.
want
Yep.
to do everything. It's like, not like, hey, like I want to look better in a bikini. It's like, no, I want to step on stage. It's like,
Yeah.
like, and you can, and that's going to come down to you guys asking yourself, what do you really want?
Mhm.
Is it really that you want to step on stage, or and this is what really scares me a lot of the time, is it the after you get done competing eating that you want to have?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
oh my
Like,
gosh.
do you want to change your body to then have the binge? It's almost like they want the best of both worlds, which is again why I don't coach competitors either, because
Hmm.
I preach balance. When my time competing is done, I cannot wait to find my own groove. But for me, like you said, this is a sport. This is a passion. It's not something I do to put in my Instagram bio. It's not something I do to show my stage pictures. For a lot of people on my Instagram, they don't even know I compete because I've literally never, one time, and maybe a few transformation pictures, I've never even talked or brought up my old competitive, like competition photos, etc., because that's not who I am as an influencer. I'm not just a competitor, and that's not how I want to be labeled. So, to for your own, your own passion, it doesn't always have to be competing. Maybe it's just literally a weight loss journey, and that's awesome because you can find your balance. You can do it your own way. It doesn't have to be, like you said, extreme. And then you can find ultimately, like you said, that the freedom of food, the freedom of the mental stigma of certain foods, and still win.
Absolutely. So, if you don't mind me asking, how did you find out, like, what was your first like bout at nutrition? Like, what was the first thing that you found nutritionally that you tried? This is always a
Yeah,
fun question.
it is. So I started out as a CrossFit athlete because my dad did CrossFit. And so once I was done with volleyball, I went and dove into what was comfortable, which was CrossFit. CrossFit, right? I had been there before. I kind of knew what I was doing. I knew I
Yeah.
was athletic enough to grasp it. So instead of stepping in a gym and being uncomfortable, I retreated to what was comfortable. So from CrossFit, I mean, I was burning so much. I was so freaking hungry. During this time, I was still kind of binge drinking on the weekends. And so for me, CrossFit was a way for me to drink and get my calories in.
And and it's kind of crazy though, because like the CrossFit community preaches, and that's the word preach. Like I never want to be a preacher of anything. And when people say like, I'll like put something on my story, they're like, preach. I'm like, no, I'm like, no. I'm not preaching the gospel over here.
Right.
This isn't religion, because people treat nutrition like religion. It's unbelievable. But yeah, so like the CrossFit community is super interesting, because my first take of strength conditioning world and my first gym like position was at a CrossFit gym. And my first bout of nutrition, the first thing I ever tried was paleo, and I had a
I never tried.
oh wow, I'm super surprised. But the paleo world, it's the paleo diet's super, it's very restrictive, but then on the weekends it's like they promote like, oh, every Saturday at the gym, let's like get after it and play beer pong and all this.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, like what's going on? Oh yeah, paleo. We're gonna have some non-wheat
Muffin.
everything, like paleo alcohol and all this stuff. Oh, but it fit like it. No, it's like no, that doesn't work. And so it really messed with me. Created a binge restrict cycle like crazy.
Yeah.
So what was your first? So if it wasn't paleo, what were you doing?
I honestly was doing literally chicken and broccoli. Like my breakfast would be like whole eggs, which not bad, but I'm just saying
not at all.
like 3 to 5 eggs. And then I would do, maybe a half a Pop-Tart or something. Like I was in college, guys, I was running out the door. But then after every workout, I'd always make sure to get my chicken and broccoli with like literally at least 5 servings of ranch dressing.
Oh my God.
Like I was like, gain all this dressing all over my stuff. But that was really all I knew. Like other than that, I don't have much of I want to call it an addictive personality. So for me, it was like, oh yeah, chicken and broccoli. But if my friends were like, let's go to Applebee's half off apps, I'd be like, all right, let's go. I really wasn't.
Hey, let's do it.
Like, hey, what's up? Mozzarella sticks. Like I really didn't have a set nutritional schedule. It wasn't until I began with my first coaching experience that I had is where I was kind of introduced to like an actual schedule.
Okay, so was it a meal plan?
Yes, it was. It was a very intense meal plan. Like,
was it like mostly clean eating and then maybe you had a cheat meal or something like that? Or
yeah, I would have like one refeed meal a week, and I would do like maybe 2 low day carb, 3 high days, 2 low day kind of carb cycle. But it wasn't a bad nutritional plan. Don't get me wrong. It was just, I was already at a deficit. And at this point I was would have been ultimately 28 weeks out. So it was a very hard first prep. And I think that's why right now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 5.5 weeks. Like, what do you mean? Because it was so fast when, last time I prepped, it was like freaking over half a year that I was, depleting. It was insane.
Yeah, that's intense. And so right after that, I'm guessing you found out about flexible dieting and your macros and things like that.
Yeah. So I went through my whole prep on a meal plan, 28 weeks on a meal plan. I had a coach who was just helping me. He wasn't actually a coach. He was just a personal trainer at the gym I was training at. And he had prepped maybe 2 people, and it was free. So I was like, okay, just help me. I need help out of this other coach, blah, blah, blah. So from there, I was with him. And I think the thing that really led me to a small binge kind of, I don't want to call it an eating disorder because I would never mock that word. That's something a lot of people struggle with. And I think he told me, set a timer for 45 minutes and eat whatever you want. That was my weekly allowance, like my free meal, right?
Oh my
So
gosh.
I had
Freaking,
45, yes. So I still had that immediate stigma of, okay,
oh my
literally let
gosh.
me set an alarm and eat for 40. Yeah, it was really bad. That was what was, yeah, it's a red flag. Anyone listening, don't, if they give you a timer, don't do it.
Oh my gosh, just freaking shoveling in food for 45 minutes. That's like a
Literally.
YouTube, that's like an eating challenge. Like,
Exactly. I felt like, what's his name? Matt Stoney.
oh yeah.
I was
It's like
literally
eating till you're
hammering.
sick. You're like trying to eat for 45 minutes. It's
Yeah.
the mindset, like this is something that scares the crap out of me when people say, I'm just trying to get it out of my system. It's
Yeah.
like, if that's the case, then you're doing it wrong. Like that is something you need to truly address, because that's a scary feeling. Because I
It,
remember being that way. Like with paleo, I would have these cravings during the week and I had a list. So I had a pen and paper and I would write down all the foods that I was craving. And so probably once every two,
literally, yes.
yeah,
Literally same.
I would go to the grocery store with that list, and it was like the best day ever. I'm like waking up, waiting for that
It
day.
was,
And
yes.
I'd be like, I'm going to the store. And I remember one day I forgot one of the things on the list. And I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, I almost forgot this. And I wouldn't have been able to get it out of my system. That moment, I was like, whoa. I was like,
Yeah.
I have a problem. And that happened for over a year. And then I finally was like, whoa, like we need to. But then like you find macros and you go to another extreme. Like you try and fit in as much crap as you possibly can. But then it's amazing what happens when you meet in the middle and you understand like and this is funny. Me and Jordan talked about this yesterday. Was flexible dieting is most of the time, like just think of it as a story. You're eating whole, minimally processed, micronutrient dense foods, the foods that you guys know are healthy. Like we all know what healthy foods are. Stop fooling yourselves and having this debate. We all know what that is. But the 20% is it's seen as this. So 80% is the bulk of your story that you're writing. You think of your nutrition as a book, but then in the story there's this moment where you have these oh by the way moments. That is the 20%. And so if your story is made up of more than oh by the way, you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
And it was just it was a funny realization, because it's like, oh yeah, I did this, oh by the way, I did this. It's like,
Yeah. I had a really great bowl of oats, but I also added 5 tablespoons of peanut butter. Or like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like, oh, by the way.
Oh, by the way, but it's just a funny way of thinking about it. So if it's much more than oh by the way, it makes up more than that, then you're doing it wrong, it's just it takes time.
It does.
And for you, I mean, you didn't have this extreme where there was like this clean eating. Then you kind of went to it, but there was somebody that messaged me earlier today, and they asked me, they were doing paleo. This is super interesting for a lot of the girls listening, because they were doing paleo, and she asked me, she's like, I want to start tracking my macros. Like, how do I transition from paleo to starting to track my macros? And I said, first and foremost, like, you're still going to eat paleo, but you're going to use paleo to practice tracking your macros. You're going to eat normally what you do, and you practice tracking your macros, eating paleo, not changing anything. And then the second thing, okay, once you get that down, you understand like what macros you've been taking in on a daily basis, what is off limits, what's normally healthy on paleo. Well, let's try dairy. Let's slowly like add in a little bit of dairy, see how you feel. If you feel good, you can start to add that in, but still hit the same macros. So you're practicing.
Yep.
And then this is where the magic happens. I don't want her changing her macros. She's building the foundation. So then you say, okay, what else has been off limits? Well, let's go to those unhealthy foods. Let's use an Oreo as an example. I said, all I want you to do is one time per week, eat one Oreo, and to still hit your macros, like what you were hitting before, but just have one, and realize that it's not going to kill you. And then once you have all that, that probably takes 3 weeks, 4, 6 weeks. Then we can start to figure out all the other things. But first, you have to be in a position to understand before you can make any changes. Because say you cut somebody's macros so early on, right away, you're like, like, what are they going to do? They're going to be so food focused. They're not going to understand how to do everything, how to track. They're going to be so stressed out. You have
Right.
to build that foundation. So if anybody listening is early on in your journey with tracking macros, build the base, go higher with your macros than what you think, or don't be so strict on hitting them all the time, because it's going to take practice. It's going to take time. Don't cut them so low to where you're stressed out about it all the time. You're going to set yourself up to fail.
For sure.
So, okay. So now we're going to transition to what is the most exciting thing you see in your future right now? What is, I know your camps and everything like that. Are there anything else in the future that you're really, really working towards that you're excited about?
I think moving to a new state. So I'm still not sure where. My boyfriend is currently like pursuing the NFL. I'm currently doing online stuff. So I think being able to be in a position where I can work wherever I want is the most exciting thing for me, because social media is awesome. Like, what I do is awesome, but what it helps me and allows me to do is even more awesome. So really taking advantage of the position I'm in at a young 23 years old and doing whatever I want. I mean, I always heard growing up, like, oh, like, just, just go do it. And I'm like, but how will I be able to? And it's amazing. I've been listening to a lot of Gary Vee, and it just grabbing the like world and just making it what you want is like the coolest thing that you can ever really start to not only just say it, but live it. So right now I just feel like I have the world at my fingertips, and I can truly do anything I want, royally mess up, and still be able to land on my feet. We have our whole lives to fail and learn and fail and learn and trial and error and trial and error. And that's really what I'm excited to do, is because I'm finally not scared of it anymore. So I think besides, growing my social media and growing my community and putting out more content and guides, I think I'm just more excited as I continue to mature. That's the most exciting part for me right now.
And that's a journey. That's so
Yeah,
fun. It's
it is.
so fun. It's once we fall in love with the journey and the fact that like it's never going to be perfect. And if it was perfect, that'd be boring as hell.
So boring. So
So
boring.
yeah, like think of everybody listening needs to think of themselves as a superhero. Every superhero goes through these big challenges over and over and over again. But why are they known as superheroes? Because they're able to overcome them. And
Yep.
through adversity, they become super. Like they live up to those things and they don't fold. They always know that they're going to figure it out. So
Yes.
if you can take anything from this podcast today, is leave this podcast, whether you're listening in your car or whether you're working out, you're doing cardio, walk outside of wherever you are and see the world differently. See it
Mhm.
as an opportunity. And if anything happens, know that you are in control no matter what. And it's always going to be based on how you see every situation.
Mhm.
See everything as a blessing, or do you see everything as a curse? And once you change it to a blessing, no matter good or bad, you're going to learn from it. It changes everything.
Agreed.
Changes everything. You can only that's the only thing you can focus on, is what is your next move and how did I see what just happened, which is super cool. So I appreciate that. This has been really, really cool. So before we get to our last question, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. This is super cool. I appreciate you so much, because I see the fire. I see you you're lit up by helping others. And
Mhm.
it's so obvious. And I'm so happy to see you growing like crazy, because that allows you to reach more young girls, older females, no matter what, just in general, being able to help a lot more people, because you need to continue to grow that platform to be able to help more people. So I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you so much. It's been,
Thank you. Thank you for the hype fest. Makes me feel special.
I got you. You are special. You are special. So our last question is an interesting one. So today is Dez's funeral. So there are thousands upon thousands of people there to mourn the loss, but more importantly, celebrate the life that you lived. And there's somebody on stage they're about to give their eulogy. You have no idea whether they just followed you on Instagram, they went to one of your camps, or you've known them your whole life. What would you want that eulogy to sound like based on the life that DesB lived?
I would definitely want the eulogy to, first off, be positive. I mean, there's no time for negativity, especially when someone's gone. Why reap the negativity? But I think that ultimately, with the impact that I want to leave on people, I think the eulogy would read along the lines of just being a positive influence, being someone that uplifts others, someone that wants others at the top with her, not just be by herself, as well as someone that, hopefully led someone to Jesus, led someone to even maybe just learning more about religion. Maybe it's not for them, but just broadening horizons. And I also think, being remembered and talked about as someone that really impacted others' lives in the best way possible, as well as promoted myself in the best way possible. I'm not a booty grammer. I'm not a hoot and hollering like chick.
Booty grammar. I've
Yes,
never heard that.
I'm not someone that maybe seductively promotes myself, at least. I do know that a lot of what I do revolves around my body, but there's definitely a fine line. So I think being someone where if my daughter found me on Instagram, they would be like, wow, she's a nice girl. I'm glad you follow her. That's the kind of impact I want to leave versus, I want to be one size fits all.
That's a great realization. That is an amazing. So your content, this is a really, really cool thing. I'm glad you said that, because that just was a really cool realization. So when you guys are creating content, think of it this way, not what's going to get you the most likes. Think about it this way. If a 12-year-old girl is following you and she happens to show her mom, hey, this is who I follow, what will her mom say? Honey, you need to unfollow her. No.
Yes, I'm taking the phone.
Yeah, will that mom want to shoot you a message saying, thank you so much for providing content that's helped my daughter become more confident and unapologetically herself?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that's powerful. So if you
Right.
start to think of it that way, and the biggest thing is it's not how many followers you have, it's the quality of followers.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, we don't
Because
need
there's
hundreds of thousands of followers. We don't.
Nope. And there's a lot of people that do have them, and no one engages with them anyway. So what's the point in having followers if they're not gonna want to be a part of what you offer? Did they click the follow button because your booty post just went viral, or did they click the follow button because you just dropped a bomb about how amazing God is and they love what you have to say? And not everyone, I think, last thing I'll leave you with here is that not everyone's gonna like your content. I've never gotten anyone that has messaged me like, hey, can you tame it down? But I also know that there's certainly people that have unfollowed me, probably because I promote my faith or I do this, or I might be annoying. But at the end of the day, the people that want to stick with you are the ones you want anyway. So just by being yourself, you're going to continue to create your own culture within your page that the people that really want to be a part of it will want to be a part of it versus just being a ghost.
Mm-hmm. And that's everything in life, guys. That's not social media. That's everything. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, keep that in mind. What are the people that you want to surround yourself with? And then create content and be a person that attracts those people. Don't be a person that seeks out those people. Be a person that would attract those people.
Yes.
And that's going to change everything. So I want to thank you so much for coming on, Des. This is super cool. If you guys are listening on YouTube, all of our information will be linked below, and also on iTunes, it'll be in the description. So as always, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been an amazing, yet another podcast with somebody that is truly inspiring, and it's not a surprise where she is today. And I'm so excited to see where she is going to go in the future. So I want to thank you guys so much for listening. God bless, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you, Des.